NJC to finally reveal the 11 justices that will be joining the Supreme Court bench. Good morning and welcome to Echo Television. The program is the Dailies, where we will keep you updated with all the stories that are making round on our papers this morning. I am Sarah Elisha-Dasham, and I'm doing the program with Rachel Tansey. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Sarah.
All right, and to our viewers at home and also wherever you're watching us live, remember you can join us via Facebook and also YouTube, and then you can drop your own comment or your view on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And let us take a look at the Metrics newspaper as our first paper that we will be analyzing this morning. On the Metrics newspaper, we have the IMF wrong on Nigeria's economic projection in 4 years. This is coming from the DG Budget Office. You can find detail of the story inside the paper. Also, we're having the Senate have issued Kyari Komolafe 24 hours to appear for budget defense. Demand list of all individual companies operating with the OML license in Nigeria. You can find more detail. We've been seeing the story on the paper from yesterday. You can do well to follow up that story closely inside the paper. And the big story for the metrics, we have NJC finally unveils 11 justices for Supreme Court bench, where we're having the writer on there saying Apex Court to now have full complement of 21 justices as constitutionally approved. Appoint 1 Court of Appeal justice, 6 head of court, 26 other judicial officers, with detail found on page 2. Shaitima reschedules Kaduna visit, and also production shortfall slows agri growth to 1.30% in the third quarter of 2023. And on Ajekuta, federal government budget 4.45 billion naira, 35 billion naira to revamp that steel mining. Uni of Affair visit Emifele in Guje prison. You can find detail of that on page 9. Bajabia Miller denies alleged 10 billion naira budget for renovation of official residence. Okonjo Nwela Mo Abidu makes Forbes list of 2023 world most powerful women. You can find more detail of that. Also, we have a picture story here, deepening African ties. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu receiving Beninese President Patrice Talon at the State House of Abuja yesterday. You can do well to grab the metrics and read more closely any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Tinubu Shetima to spend 10 billion naira on trips meals in 2024. Tackling economic issues should be priority, not ownership of Lagos, but the judge wants. You can find more details inside the paper. The big story on the paper, Army Kaduna airstrike on civilians. Northern groups finger lack of coordination by the military. Call for independent investigation over killing of 120 villagers. Protesters storm National Assembly, ask Defense Minister Badaru to resign. PDP demands thorough investigation and compensation. You can find details on page 29. Tinubu okays political liberation of Southeast. A statement from Ganduje mobilizes support to capture Anambra in 2025. Akeredolu must transmit power to Ayedatiwa, PDP insists. Supreme Court bench NJC recommends Tamani Ada 9 others for appointment. You can find more details on page 7. P&G to end on ground operations in Nigeria. Why insecurity persists despite huge allocations coming from Chief of Defense Staff. Still on the papers, we have expatriates steal jobs meant for Nigerians. National Assembly alleges, says foreign prisoners working in Nigeria's construction coys. Then you should do something about it. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 28. Another downside of the paper, we have Nigeria losing revenue to tax waivers, Senate tells the federal government. And then we have a picture story. We're seeing protesters on Wednesday besieging the National Assembly in Abuja over the killing of over 120 villagers in Kaduna State. We also have a story that says NNPCL Limited seals LNG deals for domestic and international markets. You can find details on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On the Vanguard newspaper, more suffering for retirees as federal government cut pension spending by 21%. Detail of that story can be found on page 19. And JC okay's 11 new justices for Supreme Court. And on demolition, court phrase Kanu government account over 30 billion naira compensation. You can find more on page 13. Bumping error won't deter fight against terrorism coming from the defense minister. UN deploys incident, death toll rises to 127 victims recount ordeals. Some injured moved to Army 44 Reference Hospital. PDP demands probe compensation for victim. CSO seek overhaul of security architecture. You can find more detail of this particular story on page 5. And on the budget of 2024, military to sustain assault on terrorists and bandits. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Plot to subvert people's will portray danger. This is coming from a coalition. You can find more inside the paper. Pastor Chris Oyakilomi shares God's love through the ministry. You can find more of that story as well in the paper. Stop tax waiver concession already granted to corporate entities, Senate tells the federal government. And coming from expert, government should discourage pegging naira to a currency. You can find more of that story in the paper. We have a column for Olufasan and also for sports where we can see Eagles must win AFCON and not tell the NAF Pesero. You can find more of that story in the paper. We are still having the picture story here where we saw the president of Benin Republic visiting Nigerian president, and here we can see them welcoming him. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the leadership newspaper, Muslim leaders want Kaduna bombing victims compensated. Only visited Kuje prison to mark anniversary not to see a Emefiele. This is coming from officials correcting the news on the previous paper that they only went to visit Emefiele in prison. We have trending police arrest for kidnapping in Rivers. And on numbers, 460.2 million naira for State House materials and supplies. You can find details of both story on page 2. On COP28, NNPC seals 2 deals for domestic and international markets. Cracks as 7 political parties form coalition against APC. The big story on the paper, Supreme Court justices, we have Samani, Sankey, Ada, and others pass screening. Justice Nwosu Iheme picked from reserve list. NJC appoints 1 Court of Appeal justice, 6 heads of court, and 26 others. You can find details on page 4. Third Republic lawmakers demand unpaid salaries and claims. Stop tax waivers, Senate tells executives. And concerning renovation, I live in my private residence, statement from Bajabiamila. We have Onosode Gets Management Research Center. You can find details on page 8. We still have a picture story showing the Beninese president visiting Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, Information Minister constitute committee to finalize Nigeria Value Charter. You can find detail of that on page 15. And on COP28, NNPCL seal NG deals for domestic and international market. Matawali to the military, don't get Kaduna accidental bumpy deter you in fight against terrorists. You can find more detail of that on page 13. Cooperation vital for prosperity in West Africa, Tinubu tell Benin Republic president. And the big story say even the rich and mighty cry. After 31 years, Third Republic lawmakers begged Tinubu National Assembly for that entitlement. Many of us have died, some are half dead, they lament, and you can do well to find more detail of that story on page 6. Non-interest financing, equity solution to huge debt crisis coming from the federal government. And on 2027, Tinubu approves blueprint to liberate Southeast politically, coming from Ganduji. Alleged attack on tribunal scribe Kogi police warn public on perjury statements. And on the issue of Christmas, Oshomode asks NLC to advocate for 35,000 naira minimum wage for all workers. And he said this during the meeting with the NASU, where he said that if the federal government have not paid the 35,000 minimum wage, they shouldn't go for Christmas break, and they should stop the government as well from going for that break. We remember that the president actually increased the minimum wage to that. So we are hoping that if they would listen to Oshomole, knowing the fact that he was a former president for NLC and also presently a senator in the House. You can do well to find more detail of that story on page 6, and that's all on the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, 346 billion naira voted for presidential jets, refreshments, and others. Airlines eye $964 billion Nigerian African carriers post losses. Federal government loses $161 million to 9-year conflict with Intel. This is a report coming from NPA. The big story on the paper, Kaduna village bombing. We have protesters storm National Assembly. AI threatens suit, death reach 127. Protesters condemn killings. United Nations urges military to protect civilians. PDP asks Tinubu to declare national mourning. Victims may demand 29 billion naira. Still on the paper, federal government votes 50 billion naira for student loan. Family mourns Nigerian lady strangled to death in UK. You can find more details on page 4 and 5. Suspected ritualist December OAU student sell parts to Oguni Yahoo boy. You can find more details on page 5. We have Supreme Court 11 justices scale NJC hurdles awaits Tinubu's nod, where we can see some of the justices that have scaled. We can see Sankey, we can see Samani, we can see Unwosu Heme, and others. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Well, Richard, before we move further, I mean, you and I spoke about the issue of the money being given to student loan.
Yeah.
And I cannot help but actually talk about it again today, because I was hoping the House will actually look into making sure that it's been increased.
Yeah.
Not just leaving it at the 50 billion naira, because we've seen where students are protesting the hike of school fees. And we've also called on us, if there's something they can do in the school management, they should do it to make sure that the schools are well and then. But here we're seeing that finally the government have actually voted for the 50 billion naira. Are we sure that money will be enough for the loan?
Won't be enough.
How many people will actually, because if you're even going to look at the criteria, a lot of students are actually frowning that they cannot even meet up some of the criteria that are needed for you to apply for this loan. And then how many federal universities? And then Rachel, meanwhile, this is not just for federal universities.
It's for every
It's for every
that
student.
has
So
gained admission into
so whether you are in private
varsity,
or you're in federal
anywhere.
university, so what are we
Polytechnic
saying?
colleges is for tertiary
Institution.
institution. Yes, so it's for tertiary education. It won't be enough. It can't be enough. It's nothing close to being enough. This is where we are also going to start seeing corruption thriving, because you know what? Somebody will be seated in his office knowing that there's limited slot for people to get these, and will be collecting bribe from parents, from students, to be able to access these loans. This is the effect of when something is being created and obviously is not going to fund its purpose fully. Like, we are going to see that happening for sure. Somebody is going to be wealthy because they will be in the loan office for students, and then because the slot is limited, there will be a lot of bribing and corruption just for the few to be able to get. And then in the end, this is disheartening, because I believe is work done equals to zero on a lot of levels. So like this one, no apologies is what it is. It's not going to be enough. People are just going to struggle for it, and in the end, it's just going to give birth to another type of corruption.
Whereby
when it
nobody
comes to
can actually
accessing,
give accounts of that
nobody
money.
exactly. It's just going to give birth to another type of corruption. If you're opening a student loan office in an entire country, because I know the best way it has happened, 4 countries that are way ahead of us, is that every school has its student loan office. But when you generalize something and make it a federal funding, 50 billion is small, Sele. It is very, very small. And we're just going to see a lot of clamoring for money that a lot of people will not get access to. And we know that Nigerians, we are opportunists, and there will be an opportunist out there taking advantage of people to get access to this loan. But I just hope that in the end, Nigerians will be wise also. I mean, if I'm a student I should know that it's not a do or die affair. I shouldn't bribe anybody to get loan. I shouldn't bribe anybody to get something that should have been placed in a way that everything should come to me at ease, because in the end this is not free money. But then I just hope that there will be reviewing it. We're just starting, so perhaps we can just be a little
Just
bit
let it
less
pass
for
for now.
now and see what 2024 will be, and then the budget for 2025 if the student loan will get a higher percentage of the budget.
Rachel, while you were talking, I can't help. I mean, we're still waiting to actually hear the probe concerning the Office of the Humanitarian Affairs feeding during the COVID
COVID,
19.
yes.
And then looking at the issue of even empower, it was something that was supposed to, everybody's supposed to have access, but we know the way that scheme actually turned out to be. And then you make a very valid point to the fact that in other developed countries, most of the student loan are actually in the schools. So it's all about, like, if the government wants it, I mean, there's a better way. Why don't you look at the person that needs the loan? You
Yeah.
calculate how much is needed for a particular course, and then it goes to the school straight without anybody actually having
Yeah.
to have direct contact with the money and all of that. That is the only way we can have accountability and
Sure.
transparency. But I guess we'll just keep our fingers crossed,
We
Richard,
will.
at this point in time, because it looks as if we are hoping better things will turn out of this.
Yes.
Well, let's take a look at the Daily Sun newspaper. And on the Daily Sun, Tinubu has approved the blueprint to liberate and capture the Southeast. This is coming from Gandhi. You can find that story on page 8 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Supreme Court Justices NJC Okis Adewale, Wonsu Tisfamani, and 8 others, with the rider also approved Appeal Court Justice, 6 head of judiciary, and 26 other judicial officers. You can find more of that on page 6. Nigeria thirsty to win the 2023 AFCON, minister charges the NFF. You can find more of that on page 29. Also, we have on the issue of Kaduna village bumping, death toll hits 127. We remember yesterday or so we saw 85, and the numbers are increasing. Condemnation spread. You can find more of that on page 5. Also, we have Akira Dodo's health court mandate assembly speaker to appoint a medical panel. You can find more of that on page 27. And on Kogi election, appeal court relocates tribunal to Abuja. Gunmen attack tribunal secretary. Police warn public against unguarded statement. You can find more of that on page 6. Also, we have Naira scarcity worsen. Bank ration withdrawal, ATM runs dry. Yesterday, we saw CBN warning banks are actually having money that they should do that there's about 2.99 trillion naira in circulation. So we wonder what is happening here. POS operators hike charges. You can find more of that story on page 2. And downside of the paper, we are having Forbes name Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala the most powerful woman in Africa, and we're seeing that she's doing Nigeria well by putting her name in actually the roadmap of powerful people. We have a picture story here where we can see coalition of Ariwa communities in the southwest protesting judgment and development, relenting to rule of law, peace and stability in the north. In Ibadan or your state yesterday, we can see them holding justice for Kanu, and then a lot of solidarity they are actually relating with people. You can do well to grab the Daily Sun and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, the stories at the top, we have PNG to dissolve ground operations in Nigeria, revert to import only business model. You can find details on page 6. NJC recommends Samani, Abiru, Sankey, 8 others as Supreme Court justices. The big story on the paper, Kaduna drone strike, protesters storm National Assembly, PDP wants independent probe. The writer under the story review rules of engagement, United Nations tells military. Many still missing as death toll rises to 127. You can find details on page 16. Court of Appeal relocates Kogi governorship election petition tribunal to Abuja, alleges attack on tribunal secretary. Police warn against inflammatory statements. Police arrest suspected ritualist over death of 100-level OAU student. No money voted to renovate my residence. A statement coming from Baja Biamila. You can find details on page 8. Federal government to leverage Islamic finance to fund green projects. Nigeria's Islamic finance industry has $2.9 billion size coming from the SEC. Stop tax waivers, offers rebates, and Senate committee asks federal government. Finance minister admits 3 trillion naira lost in 2023 to tax waivers. You can find details on page 2. We have a picture story showing Patrice Talon, the president of Benin Republic, together with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday at the official visit at the presidential villa in Abuja. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Look at the Guardian newspaper. Dilapidated police barracks, 22,000 officers await relocation, claims 7 months after quick notice. Here we're having here saying the Ministry of Police Affairs 2024 budget, and the budget money given there is 938.73 billion naira. For personnel is 806.7 billion naira, overhead 62.4 billion naira, capital project 69.6 billion naira. Ongoing assessment of police barracks 100.5 million naira. Construction provision of stations and barracks 5.77 billion naira. Rehabilitation repairs of stations and barracks 1 billion naira. And you can just look at the way the buildings are and you wonder why our police are not doing as they should. I mean, Rachel, you actually walk. I mean, when you walk into some of those police barracks, you cannot help but we are becoming a laughing stock because this is an eyesore. I cannot help it. Just this picture alone, it gives me fever because I wonder what is really happening. How do you expect our police personnel to live here and still carry their responsibility or their duties well?
It's scary.
No wonder they stop people on the road to call, even though we're not trying to tell them to keep on doing that. But they are looking for a way to survive. Richard, you and I remember we mentioned the fact that some of them, their pensions are yet to be paid. We're having issues where some of them have to use their own personal money to provide some of the things that they needed instead of the government providing them what they need. Their uniforms and
all of that.
So you wonder, I mean, what are we saying, Rachel, in situations like this?
I mean, Sally, anytime I pass a police barrack, we have some few in just Plateau. It's not as bad as this one in the picture. But then when you see it, I mean, this one looks scary. Because any moment
like this building can collapse. We had a collapse, I think, last year, early this year. We did.
Yes, it's this year, early this year. It's hard to believe that people live in here because this is not as bad as the one I see here. And each time I see it, the question in my mind is, how do people live here? Because I try to put myself in their shoes. And I'm like, I can't live here. It's scary. Like, I mean, how? It's not conducive. I said, how do they live here? How do you close your eyes and sleep in a building like this? And I'm seeing this one, and it's worse than some that I have seen. And I just can't help but wonder, it's pathetic in a lot of ways that this is something that should be taken care of by the government of Nigeria. We shouldn't have any barrack, we shouldn't have any residence for our officers, be it the military, be it the paramilitary, be it whatever it is, Sela. This is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And I just hope that the government steps in and do something about housing when it comes to and the Nigerian police. I just hope something is being done about it because I don't want to be in this kind of building and no human being like me should live in this kind of building.
Well, we have seen the money here and there. They're actually having about 1 billion naira for renovations and rehabilitation. So our fingers are crossed on that. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have Tinubu threatening to shut public building, denying access to the PWDs. You can find detail on page 3. Ariwa coalition alleges Kano crisis against Tinubu. Ariwa coalition alleges Kano crisis against Tinubu. And we have UN flags Kaduna bumping as protesters storm the National Assembly, demand minister's resignation. You can find more of that story in the paper. And on youth games, a decade of deceit or work in progress. This is a question you can do out to find answers to that on page 4. And on the IVF, Nigerian youth sell garments for survivor. You can find more of that story on page 30. Sportsmanship lesson of the Liberia election. You can find more of that editorial on page 12. 2023 exit list, P&G short manufacturing as forex crisis take toll on production. You can find that business story on page 18 of the Guardian newspaper, and that's all in the paper.
On Voice of Liberty, we have the House of Reps order arrest of CBN Governor Cardoso and 18 others. No court ordered me to return Zamfara official vehicles coming from Matawali. And still in Kaduna, wider attack on community happened coming from the defense headquarters. The big story on the paper, why terrorism continues despite huge budgetary allocations coming from the defense chief. The chief of defense staff, General Christopher Musa, has given reasons why terrorism has yet to end despite the huge budgetary allocation the military receives annually. And we don't want the why seller, we want the solution. So what is the way forward? This is what we want to see on our papers. It's about time we stop lamenting on the issues and talk solution. That is the only way we can grow eventually. In Kogi State, government steal election petition documents. 70% of Nigerian varsity students are internet fraudsters, a statement coming from the EFCC chairman. I just hope to see better statistics. This sounds like speculation or just assumption, because 70% of Nigerian varsity students...
It's a big number.
It's a big number. 70% is too huge. I mean, 10% we can work, 5% it's okay, but 70%, no, we need to see how he took the survey, where did he get the statistics from, and not just mere statement. Still on the Voice of Liberty, we have harsh business climate, P&G Nigeria exits ends 5,000 jobs. And on inflation, Ampiclox jumps from 750 naira to 9,000 naira, augmenting 4,000 naira to 26,000 naira, paracetamol 40 naira to 150. This is a survey that every Nigerian has experienced it. And even off the show, I've heard you say, talked about how these antibiotics have become very expensive.
Rachel.
Yes.
Very, very. This is like a
sad
death sentence to me, because I can
I
imagine
mean,
paracetamol from
not.
40 naira to 150 naira.
Yes.
Rachel, you remember, was it on Monday when we saw the concoction Nigerians are taking?
Yes, we talked about
this is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And we saw that it's about 300% increments.
It was 150 at the beginning of the year, and now it's up. I mean, if from 750 to 9,000,
so you can
it's
imagine
more than 300%.
Richard, I just can't help it.
It's
Ampiclox
over
is 9,000 naira right now.
Yes,
Wow. Richard, I don't know where we're going as a nation, but I think it's at this moment I'd love us to take a break, because it's quite a lot for us to chew. And I'll love our viewers at home as well to just chew some of the stories. We're seeing already the NJC have given their approval for the 11 justices waiting for the nod of the president. Also, we're seeing inflation, how it has affected some of the pharmaceutical products in the market. And quite a number of stories on the paper, even what UN is saying concerning the bombing in Kaduna. So quite a lot to chew at this moment. So we'll take this break. And when we come back, we'll open the phone lines and hear what your own views are concerning this story. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper. We're seeing the money that has been allocated to the welfare of our police officers, talking about rehabilitation of their barracks and many other things. Also, we've seen how inflation has affected some of the drugs in the market presently. And then also we're seeing that UN is also talking about a thorough probe on the bombing that happened in Kaduna State, and also the defense minister is saying that should not stop the security operative from actually interrogating terrorism and also handling it. Also, we're seeing that the EFCC is saying that about 70% of Nigerian students are involved in internet fraudsters. So we would love to hear your own views about all of the stories on the paper and even more. Remember, the number to call is displayed on your screen. Please reduce the volume of your TV set when you call us, or you can actually do us a favor by offing the TV completely, switch it off, so we can hear you clearly here in the studio. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, sir.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is Nigerian News Direct. Wabuti backs Nigerian Content Champion Award recount 83% completion of Nigerian content roadmap. You can find detail of that story in the paper. NNPC Limited signed 2 gas deal at COP28. You can find detail of that on page 12. And coming from Ogun State, we have police recover 2 cars, arrest 5 robbery suspects. I live in my private residence, but Jabia Miller denies 21 billion naira allocation for renovation. And the big story here we have is on the national debt. Invest in Suku, others to reduce pressure on government spending, coming from the minister. Says 9.18 trillion naira allocated to debt servicing in 2024 budget. Also, downside of the paper, we have UBA Business Series, Koga CEO, Money Africa CEO, and others to lecture small and medium enterprises on thriving in challenging times. You can find more detail of that. We have 2 picture stories on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph newspaper, federal government eyes $2.9 billion Islamic finance window for infrastructure development. And on COP28, NNPC Limited seals LNG deals for domestic and global markets. And in Lagos State, our concern should be good governance, not ownership, coming from Bodi Judge. Southeast can only ascend to presidency through APC, says Ganduje. And we have Amidia's 2055 ordinances from site. Okonjo-Iweala makes Forbes 100 world's most powerful women list. The big story on the paper, foreign prisoners working in construction firms in Nigeria, Senate alleges, says they've shipped here to serve jail terms, sleep in containers, threatens to disclose Koi's name, urges federal government to stop tax waivers, concessions granted corporate entities. Then we have Interior Ministry generated 1.19 billion naira on expatriate quotas in 10 months. A statement coming from the minister. You can find details on page 2 and 5. And on brain drain, Japan impact telling on Nigeria, a statement from a JAM registrar. NJC okays 11 justices for Supreme Court. And in Abia, WIBRI scheduled exam was suspended by Nursing Council. You can find details on page 4. Still on Kaduna bombing, death toll rises to 127, many still missing. Third Republic lawmakers demand their unpaid salaries and allowances, says Tinubu. The SDP senator is one of them. And at the downside of the paper, we have a study that says greeting strangers can boost happiness levels. So if you're one of those that just keep passing people on the road and don't mind whether you greet them or not, you should start, as it can boost your happiness level. You can find details of this study on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Another study got me smiling, Rachel.
Yes,
I mean, so what then do you do when you greet the strangers and they refuse to reply or refuse to answer you back?
Your part.
Yeah, but you know this big story, Rachel. 40 prisoners working in construction firm in Nigeria. Who is to blame?
I mean, we know. Unofficially, we know that certain foreigners do come into
Of
the
course.
country, most especially Asian, we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of these Chinese people,
Lebanese and all of that.
Lebanese, Indians,
Yes.
and all of that. Yes, we see them in the country, and we've had those cases off and on, nothing much about it. But who allowed it? That is the question. Who allowed it? We have a government that allowed it. So don't complain as if you have no control in who comes in and goes out of your country or what happens. If you're allowing it, then you should rather, if it is becoming a problem for you, then what is the way out? Is to say you don't want these criminals
coming in to serve their
doing
own
their
jail
term in Nigeria. I mean, what does that even say of us in the first place? However, it's not only Nigeria that allows this. There are other countries also. Yeah.
All right, let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Mike?
We're great.
We're
Thank
fine.
you so much.
Yes, honestly speaking, we appreciate you for being alive today. The narrative of Nigeria is something else next by the days. The security architecture of our nation is something that we can observe as being compromised. The other governments were romantic with this terrorists, and that was why things are not getting better. Now, this present government, you can see seriousness in them, that they are dealing with these people, and to some extent, we can see effort being intensified by the security agencies. What happened in Kaduna is politics. We are trying to play politics with what happened in Kaduna. My sisters, let us be clear to ourselves. Is there any festivity in this nation that government are observing in the whole world and in Nigeria that in Kaduna State, in a bush in the night, that people are celebrating an occasion, an Islamic occasion? Let us be sincere. The two people are that. We are all rational. We know what is happening in this country. What is happening is only God that will reveal the truth. If they think they are doing their British ways to do with the present government, God in heaven is the one that will reveal them. The truth will reveal certainly. No matter how long it takes, we'll know certainly what happened. How can people go out in the night and be celebrating an occasion that is not recognized in the nation, and a village is celebrating a Muslim festivity or a religious festivity? Why are we finished? Nigerians are wise. You know what is happening. If they have a training ground that they are training these people, God in heaven is the one that will reveal. The military cannot be illiterate. They will just go and start bombarding an area. They must have received an intelligent information or intelligent report that made them send whatever sent out there. They don't know the truth. This government by God said, will travel. What is happening in the area? People will triumph. We get us out of the nightmare we found ourselves since having left this country. Because Nigerians are not smiling. The hardship, the insecurity, come to think of the budget that was presented. That budget is just for them, the bourgeois. The masses will continue to suffer. That is exactly the nation of Nigeria. Okay, that we're going to get it right. If money can be poured in billions just for 2 or 3 people, and the hundreds of millions are suffering, then where is the government? I say that. So intercede on the prospect of Nigeria that just get over the abuse that been pulling us down. Good morning, my sister.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is another point of view, and
Yes.
you're entitled to your opinion. Of course, a lot of people have actually asked the same question: why have a celebration by 9 p.m. in the night? Because that was when the bumping. But regardless,
Yeah.
you know, that's why I say everybody's entitled to
Yeah,
opinion.
everybody,
People see it
yes.
from different points of view.
Different point.
But regardless, we're just waiting for the proof. We've seen that the governor has given a proper investigation should be done about that. Let us be very sure what really happened there, because a lot of stories will keep coming up, but then we know it is the responsibility of those who have been started with the responsibility to go investigate. Let us have the full detail of what actually happened on that Sunday night, so that Nigerians will not be left in the dark, just like we're having our caller here. Nigerians deserve to have answers to all of these questions. Let us know the celebration in particular, what really happened there. Were they really civilians? Were they terrorists? Let Nigerians really know what really is happening, so that we don't have people speculating and
Of
end up saying
course.
things that are not right eventually.
I mean, in the end, if yes, of course, just like our caller said, the Nigerian army are not that unintelligent to make such a mistake, but we've seen them make that mistake in
Yeah.
the past, and that's why we are hammering on it, because you know what is possibly still another mistake, because they've made it in the past, not once, not twice. They've made it a couple of times, and then you know what, the celebration can happen anytime, any
Of the
time
day.
of the day.
Now let's take this call.
yeah.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling from Stephen calling from Benue State.
All right, Mr. Steven, please go ahead.
Good morning. How is today?
Fine, thank you so much, sir.
What I'm trying to request is that the way they are treating this is very, very bad. People are blaming, they are not working, they are working, but they are still doing their best. Somebody is starving. You are suffering him. Go to the barracks accommodation and the rest. When you retire, you enter bigger stuff in the state. Other people. So people come to you one day, criminality will take over the state. Since they are not caring for that country, thank you, God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen, for your contribution. So yes, let it come out, and then if it is a covert operation, civilians shouldn't be involved. I think why it becomes a problem is when civilians are
Actually
involved.
got it, yeah.
That is just the
entangled in all
problem
of
we
this.
have here. Not that let the military not do their job,
Of course.
but when we have a huge number of civilians involved, it becomes a problem that we can't just keep quiet about it, and then we have to talk about it. But let's wait for the investigation,
Of course,
Sally,
of
and
course, of
what
course,
will come
of
out
course,
of
of
it.
course. Let's take a look at the Daily Times newspaper, where we have the big story here. Murdered ATBU student tried to help his girlfriend recover her stolen phone. This is coming from the police, who record the protest that took place there in ATBU Bauchi, where the school have been shut down for a week starting from Monday because of the killing of a final year student. And here we're seeing that he was actually trying to help his girlfriend recover her phone. All right, let's see.
The issue of electoral material got me.
All right, sir, please go ahead.
Yes. Where were those materials? That is just the question I want to ask.
Well, thank you for
All
that
right.
question.
That was from Kogi State,
Yes.
the issue, because
It's a
it has,
petition,
yeah.
material stolen. Where were they? I mean, we hope we get the answers from Kogi State
As
government
well.
and the petition court in Kogi. Where was these materials that it was that accessible for someone to steal it in the first place?
proper investigation should be done,
Yes,
because it's
should
only an
be.
insider that will actually do that.
Exactly, Sally.
So we're still having the story on the Daily Times, where we can see a picture story here, cross section of the FCT indigents at the National Assembly Complex Abuja, demanding the resignation of the Minister of the FCT, Yeson Wike, over alleged land racketeering. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. Foreign prisoners working Nigeria's construction industry, says Oshomole. You can find more detail of that story on the front page and on page 2. And on subsidy removal fallout, fuel cost part of reason 2024 State House budget high, coming from the presidency. How APC will liberate the Southeast as Tinubu okays the blueprint, coming from Gandoji. And I actually have a problem with that story, where we're saying that the APC chairman is saying that the only way the Southeast can take over is when they are in the APC. I do not know why we are making it about a party rather than about people who are competent. I mean, don't the Southeast deserve to be in place of position without necessarily joining a party? I don't know why we are going through that direction, and we need to change that narrative very early, Rachel, because when we are expecting to hear things that should make sense coming from our elder statement, and we hear things like this, we can't help but wonder what really went wrong at a point like this. We remember before the election started, the Southeast before then were being promised that 2023 was their turn to take over, because it's all about zoning this thing to various places, regardless of which party it is. But we saw where, I mean, not just the APC, but other parties as well did not give that to the Southeast. And now we're hearing the APC chairman coming out to say that when they join the APC, I mean, that doesn't make sense in any way. And I hope that we change this narrative. It's not about a party. It's about whether the people deserve it, and they truly do deserve it, regardless of whether they are in whichever party. We're seeing that a lot of parties are even coming up to register with INEC yesterday. So, I mean, imagine if somebody will come out from a party SSS, he has the right. They deserve the, I mean, it's also, I mean, we should really be more careful with some statement we say, and just hope to hear more better things coming from the APC chairman.
Yes, and this is us politicizing governance, because if zoning is part of our governance and how we share power and authority, then if you put party in place, then it's just politics playing all through, and there's no governance whatsoever. And this is what we've been seeing so far throughout 2023, Sele. We've been seeing politics playing rather than governance, and it's really sad. I just hope we get the balance soon.
Of course, because we're tired of ethnicity, religion being at play. And also still on the Daily Times newspaper, abducted corps members' parents seek the government help to raise 70 million naira ransom. Remember the corps members that were being abducted on their way to camp. We hope the government will please come to the aid of these parents and help rescue these children back. Delta government budget over 912 projects executed in 8 years. You can find details of that on page 11, and that's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, Chelsea get Osimhen transfer lifeline. Eagles beware of Equatorial Guinea and Guinea-Bissau. Falcons in dreamland after WAFCON ticket. Relief for Boboye after Heartland first win. Fans praise Mugai over Best Player award. Messi tempted to join Ronaldo in Saudi. Madrid plot final Mbappe offer. We have Olowu eyes Wabu title at the GOT boxing 30. We have injury ravaged Spurs battle capital foes. The big story, priceless assassin. Nottingham Forest missing injured striker Owoniyi Midas touch. At the downside of the paper, we have LeBron powers Lakers to NBA semis. And still on basketball, Customs qualify for African Championship. And that's all the news on Point Sports Extra.
Alright, let's round it up with the Business Day newspaper. PNG Nigeria exit ends 5,000 jobs. You can start reading on the front page and continue in the paper. Nigerian startup 2023 shut down cost investors $79 million. Nigerian startups 2023 shut down cost investors $79 million. Federal government hooked on Kuwait Nigerian suffer daily. You can find more of that. All eyes on Tinubu to reverse the zero asset sale. And then we have government to roll out 1,000 electric buses in 2024 coming from the minister. You can find detail of that story on page 7. And that's all on Business Day newspaper, and also how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for being this with me. And thank you to our viewers, thank you to our callers, thank you to our supporters for always keeping the day with us on the program. Until we come tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.